Hello, welcome back to Mystifying Miracles. My name is Kristen, and we have a new story for you today. If you like mysterious stories that have miracle elements to them, then you'll like these. So give it a try, take a listen, and we shall begin. I came across this story, and it occurred in 2011, and I can't believe that I had never heard it because I remember the event, and it's specifically of the Joplin tornado that occurred back in 2011. And I just remember the devastation back then. It was awful. But I had never heard of this story that I'll be going over today. I want to ask you guys, have you ever heard of the butterfly people? Well, there are many reports that came out shortly after the 2011 tornado, and most of the reports came from children, but there were some adults that also saw them. And of course, children and how they describe things. They described a human-like entity with wings. And, in their little minds, they were like butterfly people, is kind of how I assume that, to be in a childlike mind anyway. But of course, in my opinion, I do believe that they were angels. I'd like to know what you guys think after you listen to the story. So in Joplin, Missouri, a tornado, an E5 tornado to be exact, just devastated the town on May 22nd, 2011. There were just over 200 mile per hour winds. Thousands of structures were damaged, just demolished to nothing. Including homes. And unfortunately, over 150 people passed away that day. Shortly after it took place, little stories started to pop up here and there and all over the place. Some people would be standing in line, getting their groceries. Some people would be in line at the bank. Different things, and they would overhear these stories start to take place. And it was of butterfly people. Children mainly had seen them during that E5 tornado event, but there were also some adults that saw them as well. And of course, as I stated in the introduction, I do believe that they were angels. So today I'm just going to go over a few of those stories that I found. Some have the exact names included, and they were in news reports and news stories that came out after the fact. But there were also just hundreds of stories that just did not have any names at all. So I don't have names for those, but it's still just an amazing story nonetheless. So I will be going over a few of those as well. Our first story is about a girl named Mason Lillard. On that day, she had been in her grandparents' truck with her cousin, and her cousin's name was Lage Grigsby. They had been sitting in the truck in a Home Depot parking lot when the storm just kind of took place, and that E5 just came barreling, so fast. It came barreling through the town. Well, when it came through, it hit this family's truck, and it threw it over 300 feet, just out of the way, with the children inside. And I believe, I couldn't find reports of the grandparents if they were in a store or if they were also in the vehicle. But this story, is mainly about the children anyhow. Mason and her cousin Lage, they were sitting in the back seat, and when the truck was thrown over 300 feet, Lage actually got thrown through the windshield out of the vehicle. He had awful life-threatening injuries from that. And Mason, she didn't get ejected from the truck like our cousin. She actually was impaled by a 1-inch metal rod. And what it had done is had flown through the cab of the truck, and it pierced her shoulder, came out the other end before penetrating into the seat. So it just impaled her to the car, basically. Lage, thrown 300 feet. Lage, with his life-threatening head injuries, he was rushed to Freeman Hospital West. And there, they had actually did something that's called black tagging. And what that is, it just means that, this poor kid, he's a goner, basically. So they black tagged him and kind of moved on to others who, had a chance, according to their medical opinion. That's what happened once he arrived at the hospital. And they thought his situation was so dire that they took him down to the morgue and kind of placed him, I don't know if it was up against a wall or a hallway there. They put him down there because they thought, he's not going to make it anyway. He's barely clinging. And there was actually a nurse by the name of Tracy Dye. And that day she knew about the storm. She had been at home and she was contemplating whether to even go into work, because who would want to drive through that, if they were reporting it as an E5 and just a horrific storm hitting any minute. But something was pushing at her. No, I'm just going to go in. So she did. And when she got there, her boss assigned her to the morgue that day. So she goes down there and she sees Lage and she kind of touches him, puts her hand on him. She just kind of did it really quick because she was just walking through, getting ready to start her work day when she felt something. And as soon as she did, she screamed out because she thought that Lage was gone already. She had no clue. So she screams, for help. Come, basically. The doctors came, running, went to work on Lage right away. Thank goodness. And, great outcome because he did survive when everybody thought he wouldn't. And back to his cousin Mason, she was also rushed to the hospital. They were able to get that 1-inch rod out safely and then get her loaded onto the ambulance and rushed also to the hospital. For Mason, she had grown up in church, and that day that it hit, her grandmother had actually told her to please pray about the storm. It's going to hit today. So Mason, once she saw what was happening, the storm was barreling down on them. They're sitting in the truck and she begins to pray. Please keep us safe, help us to survive this, that kind of a prayer. So she did what her grandmother asked. And it wasn't till after the fact, once the kids and everybody were on their way to recovery, that Mason began to tell the story of butterfly people. And she says that when they were sitting in the truck, like right before that tornado hit, that she started to pray and she felt a tap on her shoulder. And at first she thought it was just her cousin. But, like anybody, when you feel somebody tap you, you turn around to look. And she did. And when she turned around, she claims that she saw 2 angels. She said that they were wearing white robes. One had brown hair and one had blonde hair. And when she saw them, she said that it was just very calming. She wasn't scared. She wasn't afraid. It was just like any other normal, calm day, basically. I get chills when I think about that. That is so awesome. And Mason says she knew that either way, whether they survived or not, she was calm and okay about it. And she knew that if they didn't survive, that was all right, because she knew that God was going to take them. Like, can you imagine those thoughts going through a 10-year-old mind? I can't. That's just crazy, but a good crazy. So I really enjoyed hearing Mason's story. And hers was, reported on. You can find many things in news sources. So I just found that just so compelling. The next one, it didn't have particular names. However, it was a story involving a mother and her 3 or 4-year-old child. There are different reports and things that were heard. Sometimes the age of the child changes. So sometimes it was heard as a 3-year-old, sometimes as a 4. Either way, that's pretty close. So that doesn't really affect me when I hear or read the story. But anyway, the mother and daughter, when the storm hit, suddenly, just like the other stories that I hear, they were out and about, and they were actually trying to make it inside of the house that they were at. I'm not sure if that was their home or somebody else's, but nonetheless, they were trying to run in to shelter as fast as they could. Well, they're running and going. You can imagine the wind and debris picking up and just flying everywhere. And it's coming so fast, they can't make it to the house in time. So they have to hit the ground. So she grabs the little girl and they both hit the ground. And she tries to cover her child. Any mother would, just to protect her and probably her head from any kind of debris hitting her. And, so I can imagine in the moment that was just terrifying for them. As the tornado's about to barrel upon them, the mom remembers just closing her eyes, hugging over her daughter. They're laying on the ground, and she's just thinking in her mind as it's all going so fast, like, we're not going to live past today. And she just knows that they're goners. But miraculously, they were not touched. They were not hurt. They were fine. And after it was over, which was pretty quick, the mom remembers just feeling so confused, just perplexed, like, what? How are we not hurt? How are we still here? Kind of a thing. So yeah, another very little short one, but still very compelling in my opinion. And then, also linking that too, there wasn't any extensive details about it, but also that little 3 or 4-year-old girl, she had also mentioned the butterfly people. And the quote I found that the little girl had made was, "Didn't you see the butterfly people?" So she turned and said that to her mom after it had passed and they were getting up, brushing themselves off. So the little girl saw him, but I don't know any details of, what she saw other than she asked her mom, "Did you see the butterfly people?" The next story has a child involved by the name of Eli Morgan. The Morgan family, there were 4 children, and they had just sat down to dinner right before this storm came barreling through. When they, heard that it was coming, Mom grabbed the 4 little kiddos, and Eli included, and they went to the hallway to take cover and just kind of huddled together and get as much shelter they could, the best place, which usually is a bathroom closet or hallway for most folks. So she throws a small mattress over them, over her and the 4 kids, and they just hunker down as quickly as possible. No sooner the windows start to break, you hear the cracking and the wood and everything starting to just split apart. I would be terrified. Most people that know me know, quick note, I am terrified of tornadoes. So I can only imagine what those little kids and mom were feeling at that time. But anyway, so they're hunkered down. They're hearing all this being torn apart. The wind, it was so fierce that it ended up throwing the Morgans out of the house, which was pretty much gone anyway. But, the wind just threw them with the mattress that they had been holding on to over their heads. All of them out there, somewhere outside. I'm not sure how far they flew, but they flew, that's for sure. And, after it was done and over with, they start to get up and look at themselves, brush themselves off as well. And everyone's accounted for except 5-year-old Eli. He's gone. He's missing. Well, they begin to search and look around, and little Eli, he was found 20 feet away from where the rest of the Morgans had landed. And he happened to be rolled up in a green carpet, almost like a burrito. The mom and the kids described it like he looked like a little burrito, 5-year-old rolled up in a green carpet. And get this, the green carpet, it wasn't theirs. So where it came from, no one knows. How did he get wrapped up all the way like a burrito in that carpet? No one knows. I mean, miracle, obviously, but still, no one saw it happen. No one understood since the carpet wasn't theirs. And, miraculously, none of the Morgans were hurt. They were all okay. And it wasn't until the next night at dinner Eli started talking. He told his parents of a brown-haired man that had been with him when he was being rolled up inside of the carpet, flying through the air, I guess. But his parents were kind of like, brown-haired man? Because no one was around him at the time when everybody was flying out. It said that Mom wasn't quite sure who he saw, and at one point she was even a little bit concerned because she was scared that maybe Eli saw somebody that was passed away, because I think they had a neighbor who had brown hair. So she was kind of worried, like, oh gosh, she saw the neighbor, somebody, not she, excuse me, he saw a neighbor or something like that had passed away, because I guess their neighbor had passed away when the storm came barreling through. But anyway, he saw someone. Was it an angel? Possibly. Either way, it was a miracle that he was wrapped up like that and found with not a scratch. Not to mention, the rest of the Morgans were fine. And again, you got to remember, folks, this was an E5 tornado. I don't know all the details, but I do know that's one strong tornado, and I think it's like the biggest one available on the rating scale. I could be wrong about that, but last I knew, it used to be. And there's another story. It's a random one, as it doesn't have any names, but you can find it all over on the internet as one of these several stories that came out. And it involves a mom that was coming home with her kids. And when it struck, they were able to make it inside, and they hunkered down in a small closet inside their home. Once they hunkered down and they all got inside, closed the door, they all got on their knees and they just began to pray. Pray for safety, pray that it would pass over them. Once the tornado slammed into the house, the family, like so many of these other stories, they thought, that's it. We're done for. And the fierce wind, the debris, like all the other structures, it was just tearing apart their home to nothing. Even a report said that as the roof was flying off of the home, I guess I'm not sure if something hit or if it was just the fierce wind itself, it shattered the little girl's glasses that she was wearing, the little lenses. It was that strong. And as this is all going on, all at the same time, one of the little boys, one of her sons, he looks up. Remember, the roof had already flown off, and he sees something in the sky. And he's looking and he's looking, and he talks and he says that he saw a white woman with wings, and she was like placed right over them. Once the roof blew off, he could see her way up there in the sky. I don't know how far up she was, but he saw her nonetheless, and it was as if she was just watching over them and protecting all of them. When he described her after the fact, he did describe her as, quote, a butterfly woman. He's a little boy, so again, as I said in the beginning, maybe he didn't know what an angel was, or, how kids describe things. He just saw a woman with wings, and he called her a butterfly woman. And once he was telling his family of this after the fact in more detail, turns out that whole family saw her. So it wasn't just the little boy. It was all of them. When they looked up, when all that was going on, they saw her. Well, after things settled down and the storm had passed through, the EMTs and ambulance started trying to make their way to get to the neighborhood to help people, see if anybody was trapped or harmed. It turns out that there was a lady that she was a nurse, and she was going in with the EMTs to the neighborhoods to help take care of people. And when they were driving into the neighborhood, I mean, this was really shortly right after it blew through. And she saw the butterfly woman as well. She was confused at what she was seeing. She happened to mention it to the family. So they're all talking about this, I'm imagining. And, when she was pressed for more info because she was so confused and kind of bedazzled by everything that was going on, she was kind of, I don't want to say mute, but just quiet about it. It's not like she was saying, look at that or anything like to that effect. So people had to press her for information, like, what did you see, kind of a thing. And when she was pressed for information, she began to describe in detail what she saw. And she described it to a T, just as the family had seen the butterfly woman. One thing it did say, the nurse said that the butterfly woman, a.k.a. the angel, that she was bigger than the average person. And of course, she had wings. And at the time when she was seeing it, she said she had no idea what was going on or what to make of it, like on the fly. But nonetheless, she wasn't scared. She was also feeling calm when she saw the angel. So, another very interesting story about the butterfly people. One more little random I wanted to throw in there. There was also a grandpa and his two grandsons that were hit that day. And they happened to be outside when the tornado hit. For whatever reason, they were trapped outdoors when this came upon them, so they had nowhere to take shelter. And as the twister kind of passed over them, and I imagine they probably hit the ground too, because that was all they could do if they were trapped outdoors. But they hit the ground, and it said Grandpa lost his shoes. So I guess the wind and debris kind of just blew his shoes right off. The two little boys, his grandsons, they were staring up when the twister was going over them. And they later said that they saw butterfly people. People with wings, and that they were watching over them, just kind of hovering there. Another just miraculous story that they had no shelter and not a scratch on them. They were fine. Blows my mind, but again, in a good way. I love hearing these things. And, in closing, over the weeks and months that passed, after the storm in 2011 that hit Joplin, more stories just they kept pouring in, more and more. People would hear them in passing, as I said. It was all described mainly as butterfly people because of children describing them. But, they were angels. And there were even, it said several counselors, just counseling the people and children that had been through the storm. As that takes a toll on you mentally, emotionally, all that. So they were talking to a bunch of kiddos, and they gave reports of just dozens and dozens of the children that were telling the counselors about these butterfly people, about the angels that saved them or watched over them, and how calm they felt. And story after story. I just find it all, again, so amazing to hear. And once I found out this story, I had to tell all you guys because I thought it was so neat. And I can't believe, again, that I'd never heard of it. But I hope you found these just so interesting like I did. And I want to know your thoughts. Like, what do you think? Are you of the opinion that these butterfly people were angels? I know I think that, believe that. I have a feeling that most people do. Let me know if you like these stories, if you had heard these stories before. I want to know. So let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the stories. I do appreciate you guys always just listening and the people that always comment. It means so much to me, and I love reading what you thought about the stories. So let me know when you get a chance. It just makes me happy. So again, thank you guys. I love y'all so much. And until the next time, bye-bye.